All right, before we get going, I'm sure some of you guys want me to comment on Friday's report, but I'm not going to do that. My responsibilities to the Buckeyes, my responsibilities to this team, and making sure that we're ready to play in 12 days, and that's where we're going to keep the focus. That being said, Julian Sayin will be the starting quarterback against Texas. It was a close competition. I think both guys, we all feel confident, can win a game for us. I think Julian separated himself really over the last week with his consistent play. I feel like our guys are confident again with both quarterbacks. I think we'll need both quarterbacks. Lincoln did a lot of great things, but we're going to name Julian the starter here, give him the majority of the reps with the ones, and go prepare to beat Texas.
Just following up on that, just what was it about Julian over the last couple of weeks that made the difference, ultimately allowed him to win the job?
Well, I think you're always looking for consistency and taking care of the football. And when you start with practice one in the spring and then kind of do, study on the entire, growth over 6 months, you see that there was a lot of growth made. And you look at the numbers and the production, we felt like, he was in a situation where he was ready to go play in this game. We also feel like Lincoln's ready to play. But, overall, Julian was more consistent.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
You mentioned Lincoln and still needing him. We've talked about this in the past when you've named starters, but how important it is for him to handle this the right way. Obviously, he's been a backup before, but not maybe the primary backup. So what is his role now?
Yeah, he was great in the meeting that we talked about. He's he knows in his heart he's going to play this year, and so he's going to prepare to play in the first game, and we know it's a long season. So I'm sure he's a competitor. I'm sure he wants to play in the first game, but I wouldn't say he's discouraged. I thought he had a good practice out here today. He had good energy. The team knows that we're going to need him, so and he knows. Again, I thought that was excellent leadership on his end, and it's a long season.
Over here to the right, Adam King, WBNS.
How did Julian take the news, and how did you kind of talk about it with both those guys?
Yeah, met with him quickly this morning and shared with him the decision. I'll leave most of the conversation between us, but. As you can imagine, talked about winning this first game, being the best quarterback room in the country, taking care of the ball, making routine plays routinely. What comes with that, and we got to prepare like heck over the next 12 days to go win a monster game early on. So that's it. And one thing's for sure is we work them hard in practice. And it's our job to make sure that they feel like when they're out there on the practice field, it's as game-like as possible, knowing that that's completely unrealistic in terms of the fans and the crowd, but in terms of the intensity of the practices, what we put on them, the expectations, and there's a reason for that, so that they can go perform in a situation like this. And I shared with them when they get in the game. Let it rip. Go get it, man. Play with confidence, because that's what all the preparation rewards you with, is the ability to play with confidence.
Over here to the right, Andrew Gillis, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, with Julian, what did you learn about him in this process? Obviously, I'm sure you got an idea coming in, but what did you learn about him as a quarterback and as a leader?
Smart, poise, has good composure, can see it, has good timing, and has really built command and confidence as time has gone on. And so, you see the traits, you see the accuracy, you see the ball getting out of his hand quickly, but the ability to run the offense, get us into the right play, make good decisions, throw it away when we need to, and ultimately take care of the football. But he can fit the ball into tight spaces when he needs to. He's got a good feel for the pocket, and so all of those things, were areas that we recognized that he's taken steps forward here during the preseason.
Hi, Ryan. Over the weekend, naming the Block O with a young man who has changed positions here, who has developed here. His relationship with Coach Mick is unique in that development. Can you explain a little bit about why he was a good choice for that role, and then his relationship with Coach Mick and how they have worked together to create this career that he's building on?
Yeah, when we decide to award a player with the Block O, it's Coach Mick and the strength staff and myself who vote on it. And this year it was unanimous. And that speaks to Sonny and the work that he's put in the summer, the off season, the leadership that he's shown, the ability to stand in front of his teammates and say hard things. You know, part of being a leader is, you know, being comfortable with conflict. And I've seen him grow in that area. He came in really as a senior in high school, his freshman year. And, you know, he forewent his senior year to come here early, grew, and just got, you know, more and more indoctrinated in the program. And certainly this program runs deep into his family, and it means a lot to him. And so, you know, this is somebody that cares a lot about his teammates, loves Ohio State, loves the Buckeyes, but has become a tremendous leader and obviously an excellent player. And so all those things wrapped into one show you why he deserves that award.
With the way that Nick has prided himself on development of people,
Yeah.
not just development of physical traits, can you just, I know that's one example, but can you help us understand why he plays such a unique role in making those stories happen?
Yeah, so, you know, our entire program starts, you know, it's our foundation with the weight room and what Mick does in there. The discipline, the leadership, the accountability, the discipline, all of those things. And, you know, Mick's been doing it a long time, and he knows that it's very difficult to replicate what happens during a season and what happens during a game in those moments where things get really, really hard and you have to respond. And so he tries to create that as many times as he can and then teach them the lessons along the way because he knows what it looks like. You know, he's seen it, has tremendous wisdom. And he's just, you know, he's unrelenting. He comes every single day with the same amount of energy. And, you know, if you call him at, you know, 8:30, he's already sleeping because he's going to be up at 4 o'clock. I mean, that's just the way he is. He cares about his players. He cares about his staff. And, you know, he's going to constantly push guys. And the other part of it is, you know, he's a truth teller. You know, we all need truth tellers in our life. And that weight room doesn't lie. The weights don't lie. And so that's why I think, you know, so many guys grow because they get the truth from him. And although they may not always like it, that's how you grow. Yep.
Austin Ward.
Do you think there are any jobs that haven't been settled for next week yet?
Well, I think there are positions where, you know, we've sort of drawn a line where, okay, you know, these guys are going to head to the scout team and have a ways to go to get on the field. And then there's certain positions where we feel like we feel comfortable putting, you know, these players into the game. So, you know, for instance, I think right now we would say that we're probably, you know, 6 or 7 guys that we feel comfortable putting in a game on the offensive line. You know, I don't think we fully decided how many reps everybody will play in the O-line, but I think you will see a little bit of a rotation, sort of like you saw at times during the playoff run where guys would, you know, get in there for 15, 20 snaps, take a little bit off of the starter. You know, I think, you know, at running back, you know, we feel comfortable that we can play, you know, 3 guys in a game. You know, receiver, you know, that's something that we're still working through. How deep do we feel? You know, there's been times we've had 6 guys we feel comfortable. Some years we've only had 3. Tight end is probably the deepest we've been. Probably feel comfortable with 4 or 5 guys actually going to the game at tight end. On defense, you know, I think we feel comfortable with, you know, 3 safeties, you know, a couple nickels, 4 corners. You know, 4 linebackers. You know, I'm going to miss somebody along the way, but that's kind of how we feel, and so we will rotate. The first one is a little different. You know, if it wasn't a game like Texas, you probably would see more rotation. But as we get closer, we'll start to get an idea of how many snaps each guy's going to play.
Far left, Katie Caboose, the Spectrum News.
Coach, in years past, being 2 years ago, when you were naming the starter, it was kind of, you were leaning on 2 quarterbacks. Why is it so important, especially when you're playing a team like Texas, to name a starter now and have that confidence in that quarterback, but also give the team an idea of who the leader is?
Yeah, I think in a game like this, I mean, you got to prepare. You got to get the reps with the ones. You got to, you know, be at your best for the first game of the year. And you know, if you are splitting reps, I think that's hard to do because you only have so many times in practice where you can rep a play. And you know, a lot of times you need 3 or 4 reps at the very least in that week of a play to get the different looks, the different coverages, the different leverages, and making sure that you know, receivers can only run so many routes, for example. It's the same thing up front. So each of these reps become valuable as you get closer to the game. As we're further away from the game, not as much. You can roll guys and you can watch guys learn and grow and see how they respond. But as we get closer, those reps become more valuable. So we want to make sure that the guy who's starting is getting the majority of those reps with the ones. Now, that being said, Lincoln has to be ready too, so he will get some reps with the ones. But that's why we made the decision here today.
Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
Brian, a couple days ago, we talked to Larry, and he mentioned as long as his career has gone on, he's never had a situation like this where he had 4 guys go to the NFL and have to replace that. And going to the offseason, he made some personal and also like technical adjustments with the what he was doing. I'm curious what you've seen different from him and how you feel like that impacted that this offseason.
Well, I was thinking about that because if some of those guys had decided to go to the NFL the year before, some of those guys like Caden and KJ, they still would have had to play last year. So, there's still some good experience in that room. But they didn't play as much. They weren't starters. So now they're getting thrust into a role where they are starters. And I think it's been a great challenge for that room, for Larry. And I think you're seeing growth there. The first challenge will be on Saturday. And we'll see where these guys are at and go from there. I think we're going to get great feedback across the team coming out of this first game on where we are. But we are seeing a lot of progress there. And he's doing everything he can to make sure those guys are ready.
Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, Will Howard was a transfer. Julian's a transfer. Do you guys have discussions? Does that enter into the equation at all in terms of who you're going to start, the message that might be sent versus a guy you recruited straight out of high school? Or is that just football today?
Well, yeah, it's football today. It is, yeah. But in a perfect world, we would love to recruit high school players, develop them in the program for a few years, and then watch them grow and build. But there's no time to play any games or mess around. I mean, you got to win now, and so the best players play, and that's the way we look at it. But as you know, we want to make sure we're recruiting the best players in the country and then developing them and retaining them, because that's how you keep a culture in place. But you win games right now by playing the best players. So that's the balance that we need to find.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
I asked you coming out of the spring about Tabor and just where his standing was in the quarterback room, and we talked about the experience and how you can simulate that, or you can't simulate that for that matter. Now that you've seen him in some game-like reps, scrimmage, things like that, what kind of progress has he made, and is he even in the conversation for potentially playing in that QB2 role? Could he get to that point this season?
He's not there right now, but he has made progress. I think he knows where his deficiencies are right now, and he's been told those. And I think that's really what this weekend was after the scrimmage. Was people were able to get feedback, figure out what the things they've done well are, but the things they need to work on. He knows what he needs to work on. He has all the traits. He has the tools. We think he can absolutely be the quarterback of our future. But he's got a gap here that he's got to cover, and he's working at it hard. And it's Billy's job and my job and Hart's job to make sure that we're giving him everything he needs to grow. But he has the tools. But right now he's the clear third.
Jeremy Birmingham.
All right, if you go back to January and think about this quarterback competition that was ahead, has it been harder than you initially thought it would be to get to this point with Julian, and why?
I just think it's been a great competition. I mean, if you get around both of these guys, they're both competitive and both talented. Lincoln really has done some great things. I mean, as you guys know, he's a tremendous athlete, and I just think he's only still scratching the surface on what he can be, and so he's got to continue to grow. And I think he knows that. I think when you get around him, you'll feel that. Where if it was a quarterback that had been around football his entire life and he was kind of tapped out and hit his ceiling, he'd be more frustrated. I think he knows he's still got a lot of runway here for his career. And so, he's growing and getting better every day. You can see it. Julian has gotten stronger and bigger, which is obviously something he needed to do, when he got here. And he's learned the offense and he's playing faster. So, again, the good news is we feel good with both of them in the game. And it was good to see them compete. And I think we're going to need both of them. But
when it comes to understanding transfer quarterbacks, guys that you recruited Julian, but not all that aggressively because he was committed to Alabama for a year. So is it harder to understand someone's personality and how they're going to fit maybe than it used to be when someone you've recruited for years?
Yeah, I think it takes a little longer to get to know them when you've recruited, especially quarterbacks is so starts so early these days that you kind of know them for a few years before they get here. We didn't have that luxury with Julian, but he's been here for over a year, so we got a great handle on him, and he's an easy guy to read, and the same thing with Will. We didn't know him very long, but we got it figured out pretty quick. Again, that's kind of the way of college football nowadays.
Spencer Holbrook.
Seems like all preseason we haven't really talked about Max Clare a lot. What have you seen from him in his first training camp here, and have you fully understood, I guess, what kind of weapon he can be compared to just watching him on film?
Yeah, really talented, explosive when the ball's in his hands, and you saw last year what he did, and so it's been fun to watch that tight end group grow and watch what he can do. I think it's been good for him. I think he would tell you, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but going through a training camp and a spring ball at Ohio State was different for him. And he's really been pushed in a lot of areas, and he's shown a lot of growth. And, he's become a better football player every day, and excited to see him play on Saturday.
Tony Gerben, Buckeye Huddle.
A couple of quick points. You mentioned 3 running backs, 4 linebackers. Who's that third running back? Who's that fourth linebacker?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
What's the punting situation?
Yeah, Nick's been doing a good job. He really has improved. Got his black stripe off the other day. Joey's been improving too. And so, again, those are 2 guys we feel comfortable. Both those guys could kick in the game, could punt in the game. So I'll let Rob continue to work on that. But I feel comfortable with both of those guys in the game. Joey is the incumbent there. In terms of the running backs, I'm going to let Coach Lott kind of handle that, because once I start going through that, my phone will be buzzing and everything like that. So the competition continues, and we'll keep evaluating it. We're still 12 days out. So, there were some things out there today that we saw that, move guys up, move guys down. I mean, that's kind of how it goes in the first week. And when you have a different game than we have in this one right here, like maybe last year, you could go into a game, give a bunch of guys some plays, get a little bit more of an evaluation, and start to evaluate it from here. Here we got to make some really great assumptions and then let them go play and evaluate it, and then we're going to get some real strong feedback coming out of it. So, but I'll tell you this: our guys are fired up about this first one, man. It's edgy out there, it's competitive. They're fired up, and this game's coming fast, and our guys will be ready.
Joe Reedy, Associated Press.
Ryan, in terms of last year with Will and having a limited run rate, in terms of this year's quarterback competition, anything you learned from that last year that you applied to the competition this time?
No, not as much last year, just because Will was so much more experienced and an older guy. These guys are younger, so I put them more into the guys that we had who were into year 2 or really their first year starting. And then, how that's going to go, because once they get on the field, it's not a finished product. There's a lot of stories. I mean, think about C.J. Stroud and kind of where he had the Minnesota game, then he had that Oregon game, and then it kind of built from there as the season went on. And, when you have a young quarterback, there's different things that you got to work through. So, I think more about maybe those than I do Will.
And just as a follow-up, how much of this week is still owning stuff for preseason before you get into kind of full-on Texas prep?
Yep, it's been install up until Saturday, and then we start turning the corner here towards Texas.
Doug Maurice.
Ryan, how the different types of quarterbacks that you've had at Ohio State, how has that affected your view of maybe what you are looking for ideally in a quarterback, and does sort of like the traits and the style of play affect the competition or not really?
Yeah, it does. We obviously want somebody who can pass the ball and has innate accuracy. That's certainly something that has to happen. When you go from there, there's a lot of things that guys come with different skill sets, and I think when you look at the guys we've had, from JT to Dwayne, we had Joe, you had CJ, you had Justin. You had Kyle, you had Will, and now we have Julian and Lincoln. They're all kind of different styles, but I think what they all shared in common is that they were accurate throwing the ball. They were all smart, good leaders. The size, the quickness, the arm strength, the athleticism, I think that all differed, but we can tailor it based on what they can do.
Lincoln's athleticism that you mentioned, can that help you in
Yes.
a situation, in a package? Could he be on the field in any way?
Sure. Yep.
Bill Landis.
When a young quarterback can kind of see the picture, the way you were saying about Julian a few minutes ago,
How much does that expedite the development process? And can you maybe contextualize at all how he is in that area compared to some other young quarterbacks you've worked with? Yeah, I think he sees it, but I've learned that when you're talking about players, it's like a difference between a professional and a player. A professional is remembering things. A player is learning because they haven't seen that look before. And I think when you look at just even in college football, the guys who have probably had the most success, if you're just looking at trends, are the guys that have been in college game for 4 and 5 years. You look at Penix, you look at Will, you look at Stetson Bennett, you look at Bo Nix, you start going through the list of guys. They're guys who have been in college football for several years. Why? Because they're remembering those plays. I think the guys who go on to the NFL that do well are typically a little bit older because they've played some. And I think that goes back to the conversation of when as a quarterback are you actually playing the game of football? These guys nowadays, they'll play some 7-on-7, they'll throw routes on air, but maybe they're only playing anywhere from 10 to 12, maybe some states 14 games a year. And of those games, how many passes are you actually throwing? So when you start to look at it like that, there's not a lot of reps to be had. And so these guys are learning over and over again. And then depending on what style of play they played in high school, does it, translate to college? What was their supporting cast? There's a lot of things that come into play. So all of those reps are important so that they're actually, when they make a mistake, they're learning, and then they can remember that play. Okay, I got this coverage on this play, and now I can go play, as opposed to, okay, and now I'm learning that against this coverage on this route or against this protection, I need to do this. And there's a lot that comes with playing quarterback. But there's certain things that players, can see. They can anticipate spatial awareness, body language. They have anticipation on where, routes are going to be. They can read body language and things like that. So, if it was that easy, I think NFL clubs would have a lot easier time drafting these guys. We're trying to figure them out when they're in high school. NFL teams are trying to figure them out, when they're 22 and 23 years old. So it's not a perfect science, but I know it's a long answer, but there's a lot that goes with it in that growth.
Stefan Kreisnig, Cleveland.com.
Kind of following up on that, like with your track record at Ohio State, Will was kind of the anomaly in terms of veteran who comes in, transfers. What do you enjoy about the process of getting a guy from high school? I know Julian didn't start here, but he was, a week into college when he got here. Like, what do you enjoy about the process of taking a raw talent like that and turning him into, starting quarterback that's going to face Texas week 1?
Yeah, it's a at times frustrating process, but it is rewarding when you see them come out the back end. I think about like Dwayne in the Maryland game where he ran for 3 touchdowns. I think about Justin in that Clemson game. I think about CJ in the Georgia game. And as you bring these guys along, you're like, now they got it, now they're ready. And along the way, you try to help them because they don't know what they don't know, and you try to counsel them the best you can. It's like raising a son, and you bring them along. It's like that at any position, though. I think that you would see that with our coaches at every position here at Ohio State. But I think it's different at quarterback because there's so much expectation and there's so much on their plate, and there's obviously a lot of attention that's given to them. So that's another part. He talks about conversations with the quarterbacks that when you come in and you're a recruit here, you have to realize what comes with it, the good and the not so good.
Andy Anders, 11 Warriors.
Yeah, just following up on the offensive line, you said 6 or 7 guys. Is there a defined starting 5? Who are those 6 or 7? What's the situation?
We feel like there's 5 that we're going to go with here, and then I feel like there's 2 or 3 other guys that we can put in, rotate. I won't get into that right now. As we get closer, we'll see, but those guys are grinding, man. They're working. I think all 3 O-line coaches are doing a great job. I think there's good leadership there, but they need to play well in this first game to take some pressure off of the quarterback.
Joe Nugent, WCMH.
No doubt Brandon Innes has made a lot of big plays for this team, but what does it say about him to become a captain without officially starting a game to this point?
Well, it just has a strong personality. I like the way that he encourages his teammates. I mean, if you watch him last year, when I have pictures in my head of when Carnell Tate caught that double move against Northwestern and Wrigley. I remember watching him run down the field on the 3rd and Jeremiah. I mean, he's the first guy chasing down a play because he's just a great teammate. He encourages his teammates. Well, his work ethic now has, like, now he's into, year 3 here, and his body of work is starting to speak for itself. So he's not only a great teammate, but now he's become an excellent player. And when things got a little dicey in camp, he was the guy that spoke up. He was the guy that challenged everybody. And because of the work he put in and how much he cares his teammates, his teammates like sat up and listened and responded. That's the other thing. It's one thing to say something. It's another thing to watch him respond. He did that multiple times during camp. Brought the whole offense together and got them fired up and got them moving. And like that took a big step. And that probably had, an impact on him being voted captain.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Do you have a leader or a decision at safety?
A leader at safety? Yeah, I'd say the leader is Caleb Downs.
That I know, between.
Next question.
Yeah, Jalen and Malik.
I think they're both ready to play. I think they're both doing well. I like what they do. We tackled again, a decent amount here during the preseason, and I felt like they're playing faster. I think they do, being with Caleb, they do play faster. But there's a certain level of confidence when you see 2 back there. I think that's good. I also, Leroy has stepped up. Fahim has stepped up. So those guys are going to have to give us snaps as well.
You had said last week or whenever it was, and it seems like it's been confirmed. Is Austin Cyril definitely going to be the left tackle, or is still sorting that out?
Yeah. You guys keep asking these questions. Yeah. All right. Mercy. Yeah, Austin will be the left tackle. But that's it. You guys aren't getting any more.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, this is with Julian. This is the first time in a couple years where you've had a starter going into August, September who's never started a game in college. Because even Kyle, 23, had the benefit of having that starting attack. What is reasonable for people and expectations? Just because even CJ at 21, it's unforgiving time for him to get into the. So just what is expectations properly and sure the chance to grow?
Just win, baby. That's it, man. Just win. Find a way to win. One more point than them. If it's, 14-13 or 65-64, we got to find a way to win. That's it. That's all that matters. And, we're not going to worry about, the what ifs and all that other stuff. We're going to let it fly. And I said that to him today, and I said the same thing to Lincoln. We're going to let this thing go when we're in the game, and that's it. And we're not going to worry about all the other stuff because we know that the expectation is win every game. But in this game, find a way to go 1-0 on Saturday night. That's it, and we'll go from there.
Time for just a few more. Tim May.
You've done this a million times, Ryan. I'm gonna go through it again. When did it become apparent to you that Julian was the guy, and then did you spend a couple of days reinforcing that in your mind? Because ultimately, the head coach does make that final decision. You got all that input and stuff. And where was that moment where you saw him just like a test?
Yeah.
That I'm going to see how he does on this particular play or this particular series, and he went from there.
It wasn't that. It was about a week ago, though. I just started to see some throws and some anticipation. There was a couple reps where, the rush was getting to him. And in those moments, you have to make quick decisions. And if you just throw it to the other team, not good. If you either throw it away or find a way to put it in a spot, even if it's a check down or something like that, I saw some of those things going on, making the routine plays routinely. I also saw command in the huddle. Again, not that I didn't see some of those things with Lincoln, but you're asking about Julian in particular. Saw those things and started to feel like, okay, we can win with this guy.
Yeah, and he's not just a quick release guy, like you said. He's got savvy about him. Would you describe
Yeah,
him?
and he's a good athlete. I mean, he moves quick. He's got, you saw it last year. He got out of the pocket and scrambled during one of the games it was in. So, he's got that in him, and he's worked hard in the offseason to change his body.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Following up on what Joey said, this is not the first time that you've had a young new quarterback going into a marquee game, but you've at least had some level of a build-up going into that marquee game. How does that work your nerves? How is it maybe, as you guys are putting together an offensive game plan, how much you want to put on his plate versus maybe allow the weapons to work for him? How much, what's the thought process going into your head when you don't necessarily have games to get to know him in a game before he gets thrown into this?
That's why we practice so hard, is to get an idea of that, and then we're going to work through those things. But like I said before, the offensive line's got to help them. They got to protect well in this game. They got to block well. The receivers got to help him. The good news, he's got a great supporting cast around him, and we got to make sure that we're keeping it clean for him and get him into a rhythm, and then he can go play. But you're going to hear me, I'm like a broken record. We got to make those routine plays routinely, keep us on schedule, and then really play well in the situations. And that's it. I mean, yeah, we can sit around and talk about all the what ifs, but like, let's go, man. We put a lot of work into this thing. You think about all the different practices we've had, like time to go put it on the field and let it rip. And you got to trust your training when you're out there. Like that's the reward for all the preparation and training, is that you can go play with confidence. You know, it's like when you walk into a test, you know, if you haven't put the preparation in, you're nervous. If you know what's going on, then you walk right into that test and go. And so that's what we're going to do. And that's what he needs to do. And all he needs to do is just do what he's been doing. You know, we've talked a lot about, you know, that whole, you know, Roy Hobbs myth, and like, you just need to be you. You know, you're going to sink to the level of your training. And so, you know, I think that he knows that the team has confidence, the coaches have confidence in him. So go let it rip. And, you know, I think, you know, I shared with him, you know, when I was, you know, in that situation where I was competing for a starting job, and then, you know, I won the job. I was like, okay, I was able to kind of put it into the next gear now, because the coaches, the team believe that I could go win that game. And, you know, we're counting on that to give him a little juice here going into this first one.
Just to use CJ maybe as an example, that didn't necessarily always look good the first couple of weeks. Did you have to develop a level of patience as he worked through his own things, and can you maybe apply that here if it doesn't look like the best possible version of Julian Sand in week 1?
Yeah, and that's part of the growth, and that's part of being at Ohio State. You know, I don't know if anybody after that Oregon game, I saw it, threw for 400 yards, and I'm like, oh, we got a special one, and they were ready to run him out of town. You know, like, and so that's part of being a coach and counseling these young men is like, hey, like, okay, here's what we know, here's what you see. You got to trust the process on this thing, because that's what it's all about, and then just keep growing. It's going to be a long season, you know, and I said this to the team before. You know, every season, each team has their own story to write. You know, last year's story's been written, and you know, here we go. We're about to start the new one, and you just don't know where it's going to go. It's going to be a long journey, but we got to stick together, and it's got to be about the brotherhood, like it always is.
Dave Holmes, WSYX.
Yeah, I think the perception amongst fans is that this is by far the biggest, most stressful decision, quarterback, and certainly the ramifications are. But as a head coach, you have 100 things to be stressed about. Was this number one in the front of your mind, the most stressful thing for you, or are there other things that you were actually more worried about than making this decision?
I mean, there's so many things that go into getting ready for this first one, but yeah, I mean, quarterback, as you know, is you know, right at the top of the list. But there's more to it than just that. It's everything. You know, when you start to put your attention too much towards one thing, you know, another problem will come up. So no, I mean, but we've known this has been important. But again, I feel good that there's two guys that we can put in the game and go play. There's been times you think about when we had Justin that one year, you know, we didn't have, you know, quality backups. I mean, they were good guys and everything. They're great for the program. Thank God we had them. But they weren't like, you know, excuse me, we had like two guys right there. And so that part's been good. But again, when you have guys who haven't done it before, certainly, you know, there's an unknown there. But we know what we see in practice, and our guys believe in them. And both guys had a good practice today.
Coach, you always talk about, you know, the need to grow up and leadership obviously being a huge part of the game. These two guys learn from a guy like Will Howard, but you've said they don't need to be Will, they need to be their own kind of leader. Yeah. How have you seen Julian specifically develop as a leader and really grow in that area, and maybe how do you want to see him to continue to grow in that area?
Yeah, I think just when you're in the huddle, you have an opportunity to look those 10 guys in the eye and take command, not only show that you know what you're doing, but to encourage them. When you're in a no-huddle situation, it's a lot different. Guys are, you know, 20, 30 yards away. The line's up there looking at the defense, and so you don't have as many of those opportunities. I think, you know, since we decided to huddle, it's really allowed the quarterback to take more of that leadership role. He saw that, and I think both of these quarterbacks have done a nice job of walking into that huddle and grabbing command. And when you call a play and you break that huddle crisp and get up to the line of scrimmage, like there's something about that. And you know, we need to continue to do that and talk to these guys when we get into these moments. You know, what's going short yardage, man? We got to find a way. You know, we got to knock the line of scrimmage back. Running back's got to get downhill. You know, red zone, third down. You know, there's all these different things where now he gets in there and he can communicate that. And with the coach to player communication, we can give him some of those little things to, you know, infuse into the huddle, which I think goes a long way. So I thought Will was really good at that. I thought Will was also extremely positive. I see Julian being the same way. I see Lincoln being the same way. And so now we got to go play.
Last two questions. Steve Hellwagen?
Hey, Coach. You talked about the leadership by Styles
and Ennis.
Yep.
The other two guys, Downs, we know was an All-American, and Sierraveld. What did they do to raise their level of leadership to the level where they were voted as captains?
I think it goes back to Mick in the weight room. We did this about I guess 3 years ago now, going on 3 or 4 years. Coming off of the end of the season, we bring a leadership. Well, first off, we vote on leaders. I think I've talked about this before. We bring in the team. We explain what a leader is. Sometimes I think we assume these guys know what being a leader is. We explain what it is, and then we vote on it. And we vote guys in based on their position, based on their class, and we usually get about 20 to 24 guys. We then break the guys up into squads, and then through mixed weight room program, these guys are put in leadership roles. If you're on a squad and somebody's late, the whole team, has to, is out of the locker room for a week, for example, or has to do community service or things like this. And then there's competitions within the squads. After spring's over, we revote again. Some guys are actually taken off the leadership. Some guys are brought onto the leadership committee. And then we go into the captains. And I think by the time you get to the captain's vote, the team has seen these guys in leadership roles. They've seen them in the good, they've seen them in courage, but they've also seen them in the tough spots. And I think all of those guys have grown from that and earned the respect of their teammates. And then we talk a lot about building trust. And I think all these guys have done that through their character, who they are, their connection, spending time with people, their competence, because that's a big part in football. Like, it's one thing to say all those things, but you actually got to do your job, and then consistency. So I think our team trusts those guys because they've seen them in those situations.
Coach, thank you very much.
All right, guys, thanks.
Great. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready to roll.
Okay. How's everybody doing? Great. Let's go. We're doing great.
Previously in your career, is there anything that comes to mind here?
Yeah.
Or from the past?
Yeah, I'm worried about what his uncles are telling him right now. That's probably the biggest thing for me. I got a chance to actually see Arch last summer, and just, he's big, he's strong, he's really athletic. He's got a very live arm. He can push the ball downfield. So he's a really good player. This is a huge challenge for us, but it'll be good. It'll be fun in the shoe. I'm excited to have our fans out there yelling and screaming. See how he handles all the pressure of that too. But I'm sure his uncles and his dad, and his grandfather, they've pretty much groomed him as a quarterback, his entire life. So he's a great kid. He's a tremendous young man. But that'll be a big challenge for us. Should be fun.
Second row middle, Dan Holt, 11 Warriors.
Now, what have you seen from Malik and Jalen as they've been competing for that safety job? What do you feel like both of them can bring to the table this year?
Yeah. Great competition, back and forth. I think both of them have really made great gains, certainly with the communication. I think that's one of the biggest things in the back end is tying together the coverage, whether you're talking to the corners outside or down to the linebackers in front of you. There's some things in there communication-wise that are really critical, and both those guys have done a good job. Certainly deep field play, being down in the box, kind of some of the different skill sets that those guys need. I think those guys have competed really well. Maybe there's a little bit of a difference in play with those guys where the positions that they're in. But still making plays out on the field, which is good. I think it's been great for us to have some tackling, some live tackling out there too, which has been good to see those guys in those spots. So been a good competition, really. We'll have some things obviously where we can play a lot of guys and put a lot of people on the field, especially at the safety positions. So that's one of the advantages.
Is there a leader in that competition, or do you
Yeah, I would expect them both to play and kind of, be out there. The first game's always tough too, right? It's going to be hot. It's going to be a lot of plays. We're going to see a lot of stuff. So these guys haven't played in a while. So going out there and playing, whatever it is, 70 whole snaps for an entire game, I think you got to be smart with that.
Go fourth row middle, Patrick Murphy, 247.
Matt, how far in do you feel like you've got this defense in terms of what you envision it, and how much more as we get through a season and you're in games do you think it will evolve and we'll see some different things?
Yeah, it's a great question because I do think this is like a journey. The season will be, it'll have its challenges and its turns and its changes as you go through. I think the biggest thing for us coming up with the game in front of us is just making sure it's really clean, making sure it's something the guys can go play fast, play aggressive, and communicate well, and make sure we're not doing anything to beat ourselves in those situations. I think that's going to be really important. And as that grows and as the confidence of some of the things that we're doing and those guys just playing together, it's just a lot of people that players that haven't been on the field together and communicating at the same time. So we still have to go through that process on game day, and you'll learn a lot on game day. So, that journey is exciting. It's a challenge, but, it's something I do expect to grow as we go through the season. Yeah.
Third row on the right, Jeremy Birmingham.
Matt, as you've started to open up the encyclopedia is what I'll call it, how have you seen Julian adapt to that? And from your perspective, what has he shown that gives you confidence as the former head coach that he's the right guy to lead this offense?
Yeah, two great young kids battling it out. I thought it was fun to watch them compete, and obviously to be on the other side of it, knowing some of the different looks that we might have or the coverages and the reads. Both of them, really did a great job. And, Coach Day and Coach Hartline and Coach Fest, obviously, doing everything they can to evaluate that. For me, it was really what I saw is just, decision making when I'm showing different looks or we're having different coverages or we're rolling through practices without scripts, where things are going to be moving at a little bit of a different pace, and being able to handle the tempo of the offense and things like that. And the huddle adjustments at the line of scrimmage, we kind of threw a bunch of different things at them. And I think his poise, his ability to kind of see the defense and then also really make quick decisions. Lincoln's a great athlete too. He did a good job, against us, obviously. And but Julian, I think just his ability to kind of like see the defense, make the decision, get the ball out quick. And I think that's, one of the things you want in a quarterback that's, going out there in a big stage and in a big game here is just make sure we're taking care of the ball and doing all those things that you need, to help yourself win.
Front row on the right, Austin Ward.
Matt, when you mentioned the possibility of Caleb playing some of the big nickel, I know it's not as simple as like, how much would you like to do this? It could change from week to week. What are the scenarios or situations where you think that makes sense to use Caleb there?
Yeah. I think as much as you can get him as close to the ball as possible, he's pretty good when he's around the ball. He usually makes some really good things happen. So if we're in a situation where maybe dictated by formation or coverage where, we're not getting him close enough to the ball, then we need to get him closer to the ball. We need to put him in those positions. Sometimes, whether it's formation or down and distance can determine that too, what kind of packages that you're running to have him in those different spots. He's such a great communicator. He's so strong with communicating, to the deep guys or to the down guys and being in all those different areas. And his ability, just his football savviness is, it's incredible just to be able to see the game. A lot of times, sometimes he's seeing the throw, but I think before the quarterback's made up his mind where he's going with it, he just has a great feel. So that's part of the decision of just trying to get him in those spots, and making sure that he can be around the ball as much as possible.
Fifth row on the right, Cameron T. Robinson, the Athletic.
Matt, kind of off that, you talk to people on the offense and they always talk about how smart Caleb is. I think Brandon was saying at times Caleb calls out the plays before they even know what's going on. When you have a guy who's that smart, and you try to find that balance of where to play him with the ball or how to get him in the right spot, how much do those conversations with Caleb help you really try to, still kind of new to him, find out where that balance is?
Yeah, football conversations with Caleb are great. It's like talking to another coach, and the great part as a coach to be able to talk to a player that has that sort of vision and feel for the game, is you can understand like, hey, he can really see this. Maybe we can do this adjustment, or he can, be in this alignment and still be able to do this job. Okay, well then we can maybe have this sort of look or this sort of pre-snap alignment. And really, that's the most important thing, right? It doesn't really matter what I see or how I perceive the game. It's what he sees through his eyes, and that's something that I've done in the past. I think as a coach, you become a good coach through great players, and Caleb is a great player. And if you just listen to the things that he's telling you that he sees, now I can maybe help move him into some positions to be in spots. But certainly, we've got 10 other guys on the field that we have to coordinate with all of that and make sure that the chess pieces are kind of lined up in the right spots for the defense to succeed as a whole.
We'll go second row, Stephen Means.
When you look at Arbel and Sonny specifically and the type of athletes they are, mixed with, I guess, what you have with the rest of this defense, how does that get your creative mind kind of flowing in what you would like to do with them other than just maybe traditional linebacker things?
Yeah, really versatile players, guys that have great length, great size, great speed, and they can cover a lot of range. I think it's more than just, the skills that they have. And when you're looking at scheme, it's just kind of the space that they can occupy. They really, I think, in coverage or in the run game, they can eat up so much ground, and they can really make it difficult on the middle of the field of the defense, and I think that's something that we always want to try to do a good job of, is being strong in the middle. And when you got guys with that sort of athleticism and that sort of size, there are some certain things you can do, different, pieces that you can move around. And that's what makes it fun, with those guys. So you're just trying to make it as difficult as possible in the offense to know where they are and then how are they going to play in those different roles. But the versatility that those two bring, I think you got to really like what they can do in the different jobs.
Front row center, Bill Rabinowitz.
Maybe the biggest question is still the interior of the defensive line. Right now, Edric's obviously had the injury at start camp. How close is he to being fully healthy?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the depth there?
Yeah. Coach Shea's done an unbelievable job. I mean, we really replacing 4 starters up front, so it's brand new across the board. Some of those guys have played before, which is great, but it's really trying to gel a whole new unit together. Same thing, alignments, positions, communication. So I think that group is really, Coach Shea's done a great job with them inside. I think the technique and the fundamentals of just watching young players grow with what he's asking them to do has come along, and Edric missed some time there, but I think he's catching up. He's a very talented player. He's got a lot of ability, so he catches up quick. But you still want those reps. You want to feel the different blocks. You want to be able to see the protections. You got to be able to understand how you're going to use your leverage and play with good fundamentals. And you just try to make up that time as fast as you can. And he's progressing, at a good level, and we'll see where we are, come 9-10 days, whatever it is from now. But he's making great progress.
Second row on the aisle, Bill Lance.
Ben, I've heard you say before that part of your job as a defensive play caller is to anticipate what the opposing OC is going to do and to identify rhythms and things like that. Given your experience and the fact that Brian is kind of doing this for the first time, do the two of you have any kind of dialogue about what you see and how you can help him as he kind of learns the ropes?
Yeah. I really enjoy when you have that cross conversation between offense and defense, and I love the game, so I like special teams too. I'm going to talk about all that stuff and the things that you see, and I think the more you can relate all of it together from a fundamental standpoint, then it's all ball. There is things that go back and forth between all 3 phases. Certainly from offense to defense, I think we're always having that conversation of hey, maybe this didn't really hit, but I see this space, or this might be, not good against maybe a coverage or a defense that we're playing. And I'm going to look at that and say, hey, I'm seeing these tells or these tips, or, this pattern is really okay, or when this guy's in this position. So I think that's important to do as coaches, and especially in a situation where, we're not practicing against another team, we're not playing against another team in preseason like I've been used to, where you can kind of make a trial run at it. You're really playing against each other. So that feedback, that direct feedback, is really helpful. It's been great for him to really help me, in some of the college things that I'm not used to, that I have to be ready for and prepare for and make sure the defense is ready to go. So he's been a huge help with that. But same on the other end of it, where I'm showing maybe some different looks and trying to do some confusing things in there for the quarterbacks and telling them what I'm seeing and why I'm doing those things. So, it's great football convo for sure.
Over here to the right, Dave Halls.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys who are going to be first-time starters in a game of this magnitude, but for you personally, it's been, more than 20 years since you've been on a college sideline? I mean, and certainly a game of this magnitude. Are you feeling some of the adrenaline and jitters as you get closer to your first big-time college game?
Yeah, I'm excited for the band. The band's going to be awesome. I can't wait. And the fans. I love the college atmosphere, so I'm actually totally juiced up to kind of, I can't wait to feel all that. I'll stick with our process, and make sure that we're prepared and ready to go. And I'm sure there'll be a moment before the game kicks off where I always like to say to him, I always like to say, well, if your 8-year-old self was here right now, he'd be pretty excited. So I try to make sure I kind of keep that in perspective and just understand how lucky I am and how blessed I am to be in that moment. And I'll try to soak it all in as much as I can, and then we'll put the head down and start to work.
Got time for just a couple more. We'll go to the aisle. Joe Reedy, Associated Press.
Matt, in terms of college things that you're not used to, this is the first time in a long time you haven't had preseason games to kind of prepare. Just how much of a learning curve is that, knowing right out of the chute it's for real?
Yeah, you definitely appreciate those situations a lot more now that you don't have them. I think one of the things preseason games in the NFL that was great was really game day operation. What does it look like with the coaches upstairs, coaches downstairs? What does it look like with the communication, the adjustments, halftime? All of those things you kind of get a trial run for. We used to say, everyone needs training camp. We used to say it all the time, and that's from everyone in the entire organization. So we try to do as much as we can to simulate that, obviously, as we go through camp, but there's nothing like having that game day experience to kind of make sure everything is in place and ready to go. The other part that's a little bit different is when you practice against other teams. I think, you kind of get a gauge of different sort of matchups and different sort of level of competition, which is good. Practicing against the same team over and over and over again, so maybe you're looking for a little bit of a change of the competition. So we're going to be out the gate right away. This will be a big one. It's going to be fun. So we'll see how it goes. But it is a little bit different.
You've seen Peyton and Eli. Anything that you've seen in Arch that same qualities or traits and all three?
Yeah, that's a great question. Peyton and Eli are so different too. As players, both very smart. And Arch has that same football IQ level. Arch's probably faster. He's probably more athletic than those two. But we've had some battles with those guys. Those are great players, and it's a great family. From Archie all the way down. I have so much respect for them, and I'm sure it's exciting. But right out the gate, we'll see how this goes.
Third row middle, Spencer Holbrook.
Yeah, Matt, from your time in the NFL, and sometimes you guys had to trust rookies, how much has that kind of shaped the way that you found yourself being able to trust freshmen on the field this year? And have you noticed that at all in yourself, that maybe you're more willing to trust the freshmen in certain settings than some of these coaches who have only been in college?
Yeah. I can't really speak on anybody else. I'll say for myself, I think one of the things you try to do early is making sure that they're in a job that they know really well, and then they can do, and they can build some confidence with that job. I think that's important when you have young players or rookies, whatever it may be. If you're asking them to do some really complex things, that's hard. I think there's always a level of, in practice, you might be like, all right, I think we got it. But then when you get out there with the fans and the stadium and the pressure of the game and all that, you're maybe at a risk of not having it be the way you want to. So trying to keep it very clean from that aspect is really important, and try to build them a little confidence early in the game. I think once the game settles, you see those guys kind of like, all right, still the game. We're out there playing football. So that'll kind of be the key for the young guys when they get out there, is just make sure they really understand the job that they need to do, so they can do it, fast and aggressive, and maybe kind of just block out everything else that's going on from the atmosphere.
Got time for two more. We'll first go to Dylan Davis and then Doug. Bill, go ahead.
The other day, Ryan was talking about Jermaine Matthews, and he said that he's developed into a bit of a big leader for the team, and somewhat unexpectedly. How have you seen Jermaine grow just in your time with him, and as a player and as a leader?
Yeah, talk about energy, excitement, competitive, loves the game of football. If you feel Jermaine every time you step on the field, the meeting room, he's a great young man. He loves the game. He's got an unbelievable energy about him. He just kind of brightens everybody up when he's ready to roll. So I think he's got a very high standard, that he expects everybody to be at, and he holds people accountable to it, which is awesome. As a coach, when players do that, it's huge. I think that's where guys grow. But you feel his passion for this game, and that's something, I love this game. I'm passionate about this game. So you run across somebody else that's really passionate like that about the game. It's like, yeah, this is going to be great. So I really enjoy it when he's on the field. He's competitive now. He's getting after people. It's fun.
We'll wrap it up with Doug Lemery.
Just wondering about what you see in the traits of Kenyatta Jackson and just the development that you've seen from him since you got here.
Yeah, I think he's made great strides, and I didn't obviously know him before I got here, but just even from the time I've been here, his maturity, the way he approaches the game, the way he's studying, his ability to just really try to hone in on his craft. and taking, a leadership role too, stepping in front of the group and making sure that guys are doing what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to be from the off-season program, all the way through training camp. He works extremely hard. He is so dedicated to just trying to be the best version of himself that he can be. You're trying to do everything you can to help him as a coach, achieve that. But I think stepping out of that shell and being able to bring others along or, hold people accountable or make sure the group is just moving in the right direction, you can really follow his example with his work ethic and say, all right, like that's why he's, who he is and why he's going to be what he is. And maybe that's a good example for me to follow. If I'm a young player, I'm really looking to him to, kind of watch his work ethic.
Coach, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good to see everybody.
I think so.
All right, let's start over here on the right. Nicole Sheeran, Adam King. Which one would like to see?
You go first. Coach, what is it about Julian Sand that really jumps out to you now that he is officially the starter?
Yeah, I think he's done a good job of, being consistent with taking care of the football. I think he's done a really good job of giving guys opportunity to make plays. And I think it's just the body of work. It's not, one play here, one play there that ultimately decides that really important decision. I think it's just been the work as a whole. And I think that he's just, again, not that anyone wasn't, he just was very consistent. Communication was really, really well done. And I think he, really did a good job through camp. So, yeah, I'm really happy for him and excited that he's one of ours.
Second row right, Stefan Kreisky.
Where have you kind of seen Julian grow? Brian Day talks a lot about command of the huddle, leadership, things like that. Where have you seen him progress the most this offseason?
That was a big part of it. I think command and earning the respect of your peers, and ultimately the locker room always knows. I mean, it doesn't matter what you may think, but the locker room, knows the reality. So just, building that camaraderie, I think body of work, and earning the respect of your peers and the trust of your peers and that all of that. Sometimes it's just the lack of opportunities or lack of reps to really be able to build that. So you just need time. Sometimes you can't, fake time. So it's just, how he works in the off season, how you work during camp, how you communicate with guys. Everything's such under a microscope. It's not just one thing. So if you just enhance one little piece, it'll get pointed out. You got to be able to grow in all facets. And I think that, he's done that since the day he got here to where he's at now.
I don't know if there's a lot of times in college football where you see two coaches work side by side for as long as you and Ryan have been together. In the 7 years you guys have now been together and working, what have you learned from him that makes it feel like you're ready now to take over this offense and be its play caller?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've been with Ryan, the whole time, and even more than that in my head, right? I mean, as an intern, I was trying to absorb as much as I could. Didn't know what I didn't know, but to pinpoint one thing, again, that would just be very shallow. So, I think everything I do and operate is in resemblance of him. I think that I really appreciate the way he goes about, the way he works and the way he is deliberate and the way he communicates. Offensive mind, I mean, I don't know if anybody can catch up to him. He's one heck of an offensive mind. So I'm just trying to absorb as much as possible all the time. Ultimately, I don't, choose, if I'm, quote unquote ready or not. Just the guy I looked up to does, and that's where I go with it. So, for me, I don't want to let him down. I don't want the team down. So we've been working our tails off. Feel like we're really well prepared, but we still got a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to grow from game one, how important that is, even throughout the season. So I just, recall back even from last year how much growth we even had from even game one through the whole process. So never a final destination, just a constant chase of more and more growth, more knowledge, more I can do this better, and that's kind of what we just have done.
Had the biggest influence on how you, I guess, view football?
Yeah, I think definitely from this perspective, I think I have a lot of, past respect, current respect from Coach Hazel, who I was here, my receivers coach, and I had great influences when I got a chance to play in the NFL for a little while. So not just to peg it into one, but from this perspective, from where I stand right now, absolutely, there's no doubt, and I'm blessed by it.
What did Brandon Inniss do to earn himself captaincy of his team?
Well, I didn't vote, but I would say that I'm sure, again, it came down to the consistency of how he operates, the consistency of how he communicates. I think the frequency of who he is. I think to be a captain, again, the same kind of thing. It doesn't just happen over even in 1 year. I think it can be a big impact. But he's been connecting with guys since the moment he's been here. So for him to do what he did his first year, and last year to fill the role that he had at the highest level he could possibly do says a lot about the individual. Made plays in big moments. And then to carry that into the offseason, I think that's probably what earned the respect of his peers. And so we have some great guys on this team. For him to earn that in his third year says a lot about him, too. And so he's going to, carry a lot of weight, and he's going to be one of those leaders, and there'll be tough times, but he'll thrive in those times. But I'm glad he's with us, and I'm very proud that he was selected by his teammates to be a captain.
Mecca, Brandon, Cam Babb, Xavier Johnson, you guys have had a lot of captains in that receiver room recent years.
Yeah, I think that we've been blessed with that. I think it comes down to the type of individual, right? Got a lot of great players in that room, but Chris and Mecca and Cam Babb and Xavier Johnson and the list goes on. And they're not always per se the most productive, per se from a stat perspective, but the impact they have on individuals in the locker room, it measures much more than just some stats on a sheet. A lot of guys have stats, but how you make people feel and how you enhance individuals is just a whole nother appreciation. I think that you don't really realize until you get older, but they already see that as a young man, and they're impacting their teammates. Shoot, they're impacting me. So we're definitely blessed to have those guys here.
Yeah, just wanted to ask about Mylan Graham, where he's at, and obviously coming up with a lot of momentum in the spring, being maybe that fourth guy in the rotation. Just where is he at?
Yeah, Mylan, is continuing to grind. I think that just like anything, if you asked him, he wants to be the best receiver in the room, and until he is that, he's not going to be happy with it. So, I think that he's just continuing to chase the consistency level that which requires that. Again, you guys know that. I know I'm like a broken record, but that ultimately is what dictates how everyone in the room can make the play. And it comes down to how often. Like, that's how you separate yourself. If you couldn't make the play, you probably wouldn't be in the room. So, again, we're not here to be good. We're here to be like the best in the country. That's the expectation, which is, they all know that, but it's just a good reminder, like, where you at? Where do you want to be? Are you there yet? That's what we're chasing. So he's doing a good job. He's staying hungry, and he's continuing to try to bring it every day.
Brian, what are some of the ways that you challenge Carnell to kind of take that next step coming off of last season, and what do you made of his camp thus far?
Yeah, we've had conversations on our own, but I think that, frankly, it was, Carnell kind of turned the switch on his own. He's a self-driven individual, and I think he identified maybe when Emeka left that there was going to be a void, from a potential void from a leadership standpoint. He just grabbed it by the wings and went with it. And so, the way he's grown, the way he operates now is significantly ahead of even last year. And he was already, more of a pro, more of an older soul. But I think he's just taken it to a whole other level. So between him and Brandon and Jeremiah and the other guys in the room, they're really stepping up from a communication standpoint and a standard standpoint and energy standpoint. They've done a really good job following in the steps of Emeka, and I've been really impressed with Carnell's leadership qualities and how he's chosen to take that step. it'll be vital to have that all year.
Brian, in your experience as a wide receiver, when a quarterback is named, how long do you think you need to get that rhythm? Obviously, they've been throwing with them a lot, but now having QB1, does that help, especially as you head into a game like you guys have week 1?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that definitely, having that true competition like that brought out the best in both guys. And, we were in one, and those guys did a great job with it. So a lot of respect for both of those guys. We were building a lot of chemistry through that process anyways, with the amount of guys working with both those guys. So, I don't know. I think that there's always a growth. I don't think it wasn't out slowed by any means. But you grow throughout the year, right? I mean, you're going to have your Ohio State version 1, and you're going to have your Ohio State version 13. And if it doesn't enhance, you're going to find yourself getting caught up against a wall. And so we're going to enhance, chemistry-wise, scheme-wise, growth-wise as individuals, all those things. I don't think a competition slows that by any means. I think we feel really good about it. Those guys have great chemistry with both guys. And, I think we'll just continue to keep pushing forward. So, no, I don't see that playing an impact. Yeah.
Ryan, do you think you'll be in the press box or on the field on game day, and what would be the pros and cons as you weigh that sort of decision with you and Coach Day?
Yeah, I think that we've had conversations about it, but final decision hasn't been made. It just kind of comes down to where we think we can both be most organized and communicate, most efficiently. So whatever that is, conversations being had, but no final decision on any of that kind of stuff right now.
Whether playing or coaching on the field for most of your life,
Yeah.
Do you think you could be comfortable up there?
Yeah, I'll make anything work. I'm not concerned about that. Just focused on, whatever we can do to put ourselves in position best for the players and find ourselves, again, being able to communicate at a high level, being organized at a high level, so we can, try to execute at the highest level. That's really my main concern.
Yeah, Brad, when you guys brought Max Clare in, it kind of seemed like he was a weapon that you guys could use a lot. What have you seen from him as you guys have started to put this offense in that makes you think that he can do some pretty good things in this offense?
Yeah, I think Max definitely has put in the work. I think that he is trying to grow his game in every way he can. He wants to be more than just a receiving tight end. Excuse me. So he's putting in the work with Coach Bailey. It's really showing up. I think that, I think he's in a good spot, and a lot of guys respect his work ethic, and it's just going to come down to continually be one of those guys week in and week out. And I feel like the guys have taken him in. I think that he's pretty comfortable here, and now it's just about continuing to put it on the field. I think we saw what he's capable of. We saw what he did last year, and we're just blessed to have him in this locker room. So we got to make sure we're finding good ways to have him involved, and then ultimately it comes down to him executing at a high level. So, but he's definitely becoming more of a multifaceted kind of guy and can definitely do it all.
You were the offensive coordinator a couple years ago. We're not the play caller now. You're going to be with a game like Texas and all that comes with that. What's your thought process on? Yes, I'm really going to be calling the plays, and how much are you going to work with Ryan? I'm sure he'll be giving you a lot of input. Have you kind of worked that out at this point?
Yeah, Coach is always going to have lots of input. That's been like that for 8 years, but I think we work well together. I think we communicate well together. I think that, we're not, we won't get our feelings hurt in any kind of way, that kind of thing. But no, I'm excited for it. It's a great opportunity. Again, I love, being able to game plan and try to put our guys in best position to be successful. And I take it very seriously to, provide the right calls, right, fits, right, number counts, like everyone's accounted for, all those things. And, hopefully not one thing's ever overlooked. So, no, really, obviously really excited about it, but I'm like kind of way past that. I'm just kind of focused on maximizing, the opportunity at the highest level and making sure I don't let anybody down, especially the players, in any kind of way.
Second row to the right, Steve Elwagen.
Hey, Coach. Quincy Porter lost his black stripe, I think, back in the spring, if I'm correct. And how close is he maybe to getting on the field? And then Phillip Bell, Bodkin Miller, just where things have kind of stood with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that freshman class, frankly, has done a good job. I think Quincy did a good job through spring. Has to keep building through fall camp and has to continue to build through the season to see exactly what role he can carve out for himself. But he definitely, obviously, the black stripe is no joke. So for him to earn that says a lot from the get go. Those other guys, Philip Bell's doing a really good job, and Dez and Bodpen's doing a really good job. It's just they're all kind of on their own path, though, and so just trying to find, where exactly their role could be this year. Everyone's got a role. Every role is critical, but I'm really been pretty content with where they're at. But can always be better, right? And it probably could have been worse, but it wasn't worse. But they can always do more, always be more. And so now they're just trying to outline whether it be special teams roles, whether it be even a scout team, how important that is, whether it's running with the ones, whatever that is. They do it at a high level. At this point, in my mind, they're not young guys anymore. You've been here since January. I have a 7-8-year-old. Like the amount he can comprehend in a month, I'm like, okay, you're a little older than him. We're way past like being new. Like, so I'm not tolerating like the confusion in any kind of light. So, and they know that. They're rolling though. I mean, they're doing some good things, but they can never do it well enough, consistently enough until they do. So we're going to keep chasing that at the very highest level.
Brian, compared to when you first were named OC 2 years ago and, working with Chip last year, where do you feel like the biggest areas of improvement you've made or kind of learned in the last 2-3 years of this process?
Certain area, man. I mean, again, I think that the amount of different scheme and perspective that Chip was able to bring in was a blessing. The way he operated was different. Like so, I think that although there's a lot of similarities because of the past history between Coach and Chip, it was obviously different. Chip's a different kind of personality, and it was awesome. So I think just the perspective on. There's obviously the right way to do things, and there's a bad way to do things, but there is multiple ways to do things, and you have to make sure we're communicating to make sure it's still good. We're definitely only as good as the collective, though. I mean, don't take that for granted. Like the staff we have is second to none. The strength is because of the staff. It's not any individual, and we have a pretty tight group that's had a lot of football together on this staff. So. I've been really excited about how we've built this thing and brick by brick started in the spring and where we're at now here in the fall. And we have to make sure we're on our toes so we can continue to add to those bricks and enhance week in and week out because that's really the name of the game. So my growth individually, everything. To pinpoint one individual area, I think would be a little short-sighted. But I think that from communication to game prep to how maybe even Chip call sheets and how he operated. I'm learning everything. So I absorb, I try to apply, and then and grow from there.
Working with Matt, who tried to stud you twice a year when you were in Miami, to now working with him.
I think he did a decent job then. I'm trying to think. I might have scored a couple times, but we still lost, so that didn't work. But no, Matt's been awesome to work with. I think he's an open book. So just even situationally, like, hey, what are you thinking here in this situation? And what is some perspective? Because frankly, he then went and called plays for Coach Belichick. It sounds like, obviously offensively for a year. So he's got one heck of a perspective. So to not use that book of knowledge would be a mishap by us. So we've definitely done that, and he's awesome to be around. Thank you. Thanks, guys.